Imagine your country achieving like this massive economic milestone on the global stage, finally graduating from a list of the world's least developed nations.
Right, which sounds like a huge win.
Exactly. It sounds amazing. But your reward for that achievement is an immediate $1 billion penalty.
Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Or, okay, imagine finally electing a new government that has total unprecedented control to fix a broken system. And then you find out their very first test is figuring out how to handle a literal bonfire of your neighboring superpower's political literature.
I mean, the contradictions we're seeing right now are they're staggering.
Yeah.
You're looking at a nation attempting to rewrite its entire domestic and international identity, right? While the global systems it relies on for basic survival are just fracturing in real time.
Well, welcome to another deep dive on the Nepali Diaspora Network podcast. We're your source for news, views, and insights for Nepalese worldwide. And today, we are unpacking the latest Nepali Diaspora Digest.
Yeah, specifically week 12. So that's covering March 14th through the 20th of 2026.
Right. And if you're part of the global diaspora or, just tracking South Asian geopolitics, today's mission is breaking down how Nepal's brand new government is colliding headfirst with massive global shockwaves.
And the sources for this week provide this brilliant case study in the mechanics of transition, really.
How so?
Well, for decades, Nepal has been viewed geopolitically as this traditional buffer state, stuck between two giants, India and China.
Right.
But now they're actively trying to market themselves as a vibrant bridge on the global stage.
Vibrant bridge.
Yeah. And they're attempting this massive diplomatic and economic pivot at the exact moment their citizens are demanding an unprecedented level of accountability.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we have to start with the political earthquake that makes all of this possible, right? On March 27th, 35-year-old Balen Shah is set to be sworn in as prime minister.
Which is historic in itself.
Completely.
Yeah.
And his party, the RSP, has secured a massive 182-seat single-party majority. And to put the sheer scale of that into perspective, it's like a disruptive tech startup that has spent years complaining about a broken legacy industry, right?
Sure.
And then overnight, they don't just gain market share, they buy the entire industry.
Right.
They now have a total monopoly on governance.
Which completely rewrites the rules of engagement in Kathmandu. I mean, historically, governments there have relied on these fragile multi-party coalitions.
Right, there's always a coalition.
Exactly. And the mechanism of a coalition provides a built-in safety net. Like if a policy fails or the economy tanks, you can just obscure the blame by pointing a finger at your coalition partners.
Ah, the classic pass the buck strategy.
Exactly. But the RSP has stripped away their own safety net. They hold the majority, so they hold all the responsibility.
And they're moving fast, too.
Mhm.
The sources note they actually had to amend Article 66 of their own party charter just to clear the path for Shah.
Yeah, because normally you have to be a sitting member of parliament to become the parliamentary party leader.
Right. But they changed their internal rules to bypass that restriction. And they're setting up this radically lean cabinet. Like, they're aiming for around 15 ministers, capped at 18.
The public scrutiny on this lean cabinet is going to be intense, though.
Oh, absolutely.
And largely because of the baggage the outgoing interim administration is leaving behind.
Right. Prime Minister Karki's outgoing government.
Yeah. They are currently under fire for 11th hour cronyism. I mean, they appointed her personal secretary to chair the National Trust for Nature Conservation just days before the handover.
Wow.
And she nominated the Home Minister to the upper house.
Which is exactly the kind of old-school political maneuvering that triggered the Gen Z protests back in September 2025 in the first place.
Exactly.
The hypocrisy of doing the exact same thing on your way out the door sets this hyper-vigilant tone for the incoming administration.
It really does.
And the RSP is walking straight into a massive test of their authority. So, at Manmohan Technical University, hundreds of copies of Xi Jinping's book, The Governance of China, were burned in a bonfire.
Yeah, this is a crazy story.
It is. And the university administration claimed it was an accident. They said, oh, the books were damaged by termites and destroyed during a routine cleanup.
Which Beijing fundamentally rejected.
I mean, obviously.
Right. The Chinese embassy actually issued a formal protest to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs via a note verbale.
Okay, for those of us who don't work in international relations, what exactly is a note verbale, and why does it matter?
So a note verbale is a formal, unsigned diplomatic communication. It carries less weight than a treaty, but significantly more weight than, say, a press release or just a verbal complaint.
Okay.
It's a mechanism that forces the receiving country to put their official response on paper. It creates a permanent diplomatic record.
So they can't just brush it off in a meeting.
Exactly. And you have to understand, the governance of China isn't just a collection of speeches. It represents the ideological framework of the Chinese state.
Right. So burning it is...
It's perceived as a direct insult to the state itself.
Which puts the RSP in a brutal bind. I mean, if you're this incoming government pushing a strategy of being a vibrant bridge between India and China, how do you handle a literal bonfire of your neighbor's political literature on day one without looking either too weak or too aggressive?
Well, what's fascinating here is the 15-day probe the government just initiated. It's basically an audition.
Audition for what?
For their vibrant bridge concept. Being a bridge means facilitating trade and ideas, sure, but it also means absorbing pressure from both sides without collapsing.
I see.
How they document and resolve this incident will signal to both China and India exactly what kind of leverage works against this new administration.
That concept of leverage is crucial. Because the government's inability to dictate terms to global superpowers locally, it's mirrored by their current inability to protect their own citizens globally.
Yeah, the situation in the Middle East right now.
Exactly. The geopolitical hurricane happening over there has caught 1.8 million Nepalese workers directly in the crosshairs.
The data in the digest regarding the Gulf crisis is just sobering. We're looking at a situation where international conflict has completely severed standard logistical chains.
The numbers are incredibly heavy.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about 22 bodies of deceased Nepalese migrant workers currently stranded abroad.
Yeah.
8 in the UAE, 7 in Kuwait, and 7 in Saudi Arabia. And we know Iran has attacked the Dubai airport 3 times in recent weeks.
Right.
But help me connect the dots here. Why does an attack on an airport in Dubai mean a family in Nepal has to wait over a month to bring a loved one home from Kuwait or Saudi Arabia?
It all comes down to regional logistics and risk assessment. Dubai operates as the central aviation hub for that entire region.
Oh, wait.
When it falls under attack, commercial airlines just suspend or reroute flights due to immediate airspace risks. And furthermore, specialized cargo, like human remains, it requires specific freight forwarders.
Right, you can't just put that on any commercial flight.
Exactly. And when the region becomes an active conflict zone, maritime and aviation insurance companies hike their premiums astronomically.
Which trickles down to the families.
Right. The logistical chain breaks down, and the cost of transport skyrockets to levels we're seeing now, up to Rs. 900,000.
Wow.
Which is financially impossible for most families.
So the infrastructure to move people simply ceases to exist.
Yeah.
And that paralyzes the living workers too, right?
Yeah, it does.
The sources state that over 2,000 labor permits are being denied daily. You have 20,500 workers who have, completed their visa procedures, they passed their medical exams, and they're just stuck in limbo.
Because 6 Middle Eastern countries have been placed on a permanent red zone list.
Right.
But the vulnerability of the diaspora isn't limited to the Middle East either. In the U.S., a federal court recently allowed the termination of temporary protected status, or TPS, for Nepalese citizens.
And TPS is the program that allows foreign nationals to remain in the U.S. if conditions back home, like the aftermath of the 2015 earthquake, make a safe return impossible. Right?
Exactly. And with the termination of that status, at least 7,000 Nepalese are suddenly at risk of deportation.
And the sources say chartered deportation flights to Kathmandu have already begun.
They have. So you have this massive population of Nepalese citizens who essentially keep the domestic economy afloat through remittances, suddenly realizing that their economic contributions offer zero political or legal protection when global systems fail.
Which perfectly explains the intense urgency at the Non-Resident Nepali Association, the NRNA. They're holding their 12th global conference in Kathmandu right now.
Right.
They elected a new president, Dr. Hemraj Sharma, and they drafted this 12-point Kathmandu Declaration. They're demanding overseas voting rights, citizenship reforms, and dignified labor protections.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the diaspora is essentially attempting to renegotiate their social contract with the state.
Yeah.
They're transitioning from being a passive source of revenue to an active political constituency.
But I have to challenge the reality of that transition based on the sources. I mean, the outgoing NRNA president, Binod Kunwar, stated bluntly that current NRN citizenship provides, quote, fewer practical benefits than a membership card.
Ouch. Yeah.
Right? And senior advocates are calling the situation a total legal deadlock. So if the Nepalese bureaucracy moves at a glacial pace, why should the diaspora believe this 12-point declaration is anything more than just empty promises written on a piece of paper?
Well, it's a fair skepticism, honestly. But the leverage has shifted. The RSP government ran on a platform of radical disruption.
Curd.
If they ignore the NRNA, they risk alienating the very demographic that funded and supported their rise to power. The diaspora represents a massive block of political influence through their family connections back home.
Right, because everyone knows someone working abroad.
Exactly. And the RSP needs their continued economic support, especially now, because those same global shocks that are stranding workers are also sending massive inflationary tremors directly into the Nepalese economy.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because the Gulf crisis isn't just an abstract geopolitical issue. It is actively changing the cost of cooking dinner in Kathmandu.
It really is.
Let's look at the mechanisms driving this. Crude oil has hit $105.87 a barrel, and because Nepal imports all its petroleum from India and lacks a domestic strategic stockpile, they absorb global price hikes instantly.
Right.
Petrol went up Rs 15 per liter.
And when fuel prices rise, the cost of moving goods rises. Freight charges jumped Rs 5,000 per ton. Construction materials like iron bars and cement are skyrocketing, which, stalls domestic development.
And the digest highlights hoarding and panic buying of LPG cooking gas cylinders in mountain districts like Calico and Jumla. Police are actually having to confiscate thousands of hoarded cylinders.
Wow.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The reaction from Nepalese households isn't just panic, it's rapid adaptation. It's like an evolutionary stress test.
How do you mean?
The environment suddenly changes, and you either adapt or fail. They're abandoning gas and buying electric induction stoves en masse. Imports of induction stoves just surged to 132,000 units.
That's a huge spike.
It feels like a forced software update, right?
Yeah.
It's a painful, glitchy transition right now because the electrical grid wasn't fully prepared for the load, but it patches a critical vulnerability, the nation's reliance on imported fossil fuels.
The irony of this shift is just profound.
Yeah.
Well, the government established an aspirational policy goal years ago. They wanted 25% of households using electric stoves by 2030 for environmental and economic reasons.
Okay.
But they really struggled to incentivize it. Now, a massive global oil shock is forcing the population to adopt the technology.
So they might actually hit it.
Right. It's potentially pushing the government to hit its green energy target years ahead of schedule.
So a crisis becomes a catalyst. But we have to talk about the looming economic cliff that the government is walking toward. In November 2026, Nepal will officially graduate from Least Developed Country, or LDC, status.
Yeah, this is a big one.
And the International Labor Organization warns this could cost Nepal nearly $1 billion and 132,000 jobs. How does an achievement turn into a billion-dollar penalty?
It comes down to international trade mechanics. While Nepal is on the LDC list, it benefits from the generalized system of preferences.
Okay.
This allows Nepalese exports, particularly textiles and apparel, to enter major Western markets duty-free or at significantly reduced tariffs.
Right.
When Nepal graduates from that list, those preferential treatments vanish.
Meaning buyers in Europe or the U.S. suddenly have to pay standard international taxes on Nepalese garments.
Precisely. Nepalese products immediately become more expensive for international buyers.
And they just go somewhere else.
Exactly. If the domestic manufacturing sector hasn't improved its efficiency or quality to justify that higher price, international buyers will simply shift their orders to countries like Bangladesh or Vietnam.
Wow.
That lapse of market competitiveness is where the ILO derives its estimate of a $1 billion loss and the elimination of 132,000 jobs, and roughly half of those are held by women.
To survive that transition, the country needs world-class infrastructure to make exporting cheaper and faster. But a scathing report from the World Bank outlines exactly why they are not ready.
The National Pride Projects report?
Yes. They analyzed Nepal's National Pride projects. These are the massive, vital infrastructure initiatives and concluded that at the current bureaucratic pace, it will take Nepal 41 years to finish them.
41 years.
Yeah.
The bottleneck isn't funding, though. It's the machinery of governance itself. Capital expenditure is sitting at a critically low 19.24%.
Which means what, exactly?
It means the money is allocated, it's sitting there, but the bureaucracy is too tangled to legally deploy it.
That's insane, and the report details how the fundamental mechanisms of building are broken. Just acquiring the land for one single road project took 35 months.
Yeah.
That's 150% over schedule. Nepal currently holds the longest World Bank procurement timeline in all of South Asia, at 231 days just to approve a contract.
And this is the actual challenge facing the RSP. I mean, it's one thing to have a 182-seat majority in parliament. It's entirely another to force a sprawling, entrenched bureaucracy to move faster than geological speed.
And the public has made it incredibly clear that they are not waiting 41 years for this system to fix itself.
No, they aren't.
The demand for immediate accountability is spilling into the streets. We're seeing major grassroots movements happening simultaneously. Gen Z activists are staging silent sit-ins at Medikar Mandala and in Chitwan.
Right, for the uprising report.
Yes, they're demanding the full, unredacted release of the commission report regarding the September 2025 uprising, which resulted in 77 deaths.
Because the interim government only released a synopsis of that report.
Right.
And a synopsis allows the state to control the narrative and obscure individual culpability. The activists are completely rejecting that manufactured transparency.
And parallel to that, there are nationwide rallies stretching from Kakarpita to Kathmandu demanding justice for 16-year-old Anissa BK, who was killed in Surkhet.
Yeah, that case is heartbreaking.
Students and teachers are striking, demanding the perpetrators face the full extent of the law. I mean, the RSP made accountability their core brand during the election. The public is now enforcing that brand.
This raises an important point about the RSP. The honeymoon period for this new administration is going to be measured in days, not months.
Oh, absolutely.
The electorate is signaling that transparency and swift justice are non-negotiable prerequisites for maintaining peace. They aren't just campaign slogans anymore.
It's a heavy, relentless news cycle. But as we comb through the Diaspora Digest, we also see incredible evidence of a culture that just thrives under pressure.
You really do.
The global footprint of the Nepalese people is expanding in brilliant ways, and we have to highlight the premiere of Leopard Sisters.
Oh, it is a remarkable piece of filmmaking.
It's an award-winning documentary executive produced by Leonardo DiCaprio, directed by a team including Sonam Choki Lama. And it follows 17-year-old Tenzin Bhuti Gurung, who is being mentored by conservationist Shiring Lamu Lama. They're tracking endangered snow leopards across the remote, high-altitude passes of Dolpa.
And the significance of this documentary extends far beyond cinema, really.
How so?
Well, it takes a hyper-local story of indigenous women leading conservation efforts in a landscape where, fewer than 500 snow leopards remain.
Oh, fewer than 500.
Yeah, and it elevates that narrative to a global platform. It reframes Nepal's international identity, shifting it away from just political instability and focusing it on vital global environmental stewardship.
And that reframing is happening across multiple disciplines. Sujan Kakshapati just secured double gold in Kung Fu at the Battle of Bavaria in Germany, defeating competitors from 10 different nations.
Incredible.
And in the U.S., Nepalese designers Kriti Manali and Prabal Gurung showcased phenomenal collections in New York Fashion Week. Kriti actually drew inspiration from Swayam Punaf, while Prabal built his collection around the theme of emotional resilience.
It just proves that the Nepalese identity is completely unconfined by geography.
Yes.
The diaspora functions as this dynamic, decentralized network of athletes, artists, and innovators who are actively shaping global culture.
Which is exactly why the community resources highlighted in the digest are so vital. And for those of you listening who are part of the diaspora in the UK, the newsletter points to a platform called balaya.uk.
It's a great resource.
It really is. It's a classifieds hub designed specifically to help Nepalese in the UK connect on housing, job opportunities, local events, and even discovering Nepalese-owned businesses.
Yeah.
It's an excellent tool for staying plugged into the community and supporting each other abroad, so definitely check that out.
Synthesizing all the sources today, it really reveals a country at a fascinating inflection point.
Yeah.
A young, untested, single-party government has been handed a massive mandate for reform. But they must execute that reform while navigating extreme global vulnerabilities, from shattered logistical chains in the Gulf to impending trade penalties. Yet, the persistent resilience of the Nepalese people, both adapting rapidly at home and excelling internationally, that remains the nation's most powerful stabilizing force.
It really does. Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today.
Okay.
For decades, the political establishment in Kathmandu has viewed the Nepalese diaspora primarily as an economic lifeline, right? A source of remittances expected to keep the economy afloat while remaining politically silent.
Yeah, that's been the dynamic forever.
But when you examine the firm legal demands of the NRNA, the cultural dominance at New York Fashion Week, and the global push for environmental conservation originating in Dolpa, What's it mean for the future of a nation when its strongest drivers of modernization, identity, and accountability are the citizens living entirely outside its borders?
That's a profound shift.
It makes you wonder if that vibrant bridge the government wants to build isn't just about connecting India and China. Maybe the most important bridge they need to build is the one connecting Nepal back to its own people, scattered across the globe, just waiting for their chance to finally help steer the ship. Something to mull over. You can find the full newsletter and all the stories we cover today at nepaldiaspora.net. We will see you next time on The Deep Dive.